Hi everybody, I'm Sam Weeks. I am a MBA admissions consultant and I'm joined today by Sanita, who is a graduate of INSEAD's GEMBA program. Sanita, lovely to have you on the podcast for a conversation around INSEAD, GEMBA, and your work at 7A Leadership ever since. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you for having me. So yes, I'm Sanita Pukita, and I just graduated in December, in the January from INSEAD GEMBA. I also started new work in an established startup called 7A Leadership, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Awesome. So let's dive right in talking about INSEAD, shall we? I think that's the first thing I want to talk about. So you did the GEMBA program. Can you talk a little bit about what that program looks like from a sort of timeline standpoint, who is attracted to the program, and what you got out of it?
Absolutely. So it depends where you choose to do it. So INSEAD has three campuses, one in Fontainebleau, France, one in Abu Dhabi in UAE, and one in Singapore. So depending where the person decides to start the program will look a little bit different. The Singapore starts the earliest in August and followed by Abu Dhabi in October, and then European campus starts in November. So your program could be between 14 to 17 months long journey.
And also, sorry to interrupt, do you get full choice between those campuses? Do you have to, is it some of them more competitive? Like, can you do what you want?
You can, because when you apply, you indicate which campus you are applying, and that's the one you will be obviously your first choice. If then you decide to change, you still have that option before you're fully kind of into the program. But I believe that, I don't know if there's any competitive, more competitive, less competitive. The European campus is the largest one, usually over 100 participants. And then Singapore being the second in terms of size, around 80, usually 80 plus. And then Middle East, I believe this year they are around 50 in the cohort.
And so you obviously decided the INSEAD GEMBA was the program for you, and you researched other schools and other programs. Why did you decide on INSEAD?
That's a very good question. And I didn't research that much. INSEAD was kind of my first choice. And that was, I think, actually the only choice. Couple of reasons over years, when I applied in INSEAD, I was still working in Johnson & Johnson. And quite a few leaders in Johnson & Johnson have been graduated from INSEAD, either MBA or GEMBA programs. So I found, always this name kind of came up into conversations, or I have seen those leaders being very successful and having that background. So that was always very interesting for me. And obviously then being based in Europe for many years and now based in Dubai, in UAE, that was also very attractive to have a school that has several campuses and presence in different countries and continents even. And as well, it's very international, because when I looked at the INSEAD alumni kind of population and where they are based at and which countries are represented in INSEAD, I think it's 180 countries, and they have alumni all over the world, close to 70,000 alumni, and the network is very, very active as well. So that was a big driver for me.
It's definitely the most competitive of the EMBA programs that I work with and help people apply to. INSEAD's GEMBA program is the one that consistently comes up as sort of the most appealing. People apply and then maybe apply to other programs as well, but INSEAD's GEMBA is the one that people want to get into. It's the one that people really compete for. And I think it is largely because of that international exposure, as you talk about. It does seem to be, if you want to move to the US, if you want a US focused experience, then those US schools will give you that. But if you want an international network, which in lots of industries is really what you're looking for, then INSEAD does seem to be possibly the best EMBA program out there at the moment.
I mean, it's hard for me to judge since I haven't done any other ones, but I 100% can recommend the experience. We did have people even from US joining our cohort. We had people from Europe joining the Asian cohort, people from Asia joining European cohort, people from Middle East going both ways as well. So it's really going kind of cross zigzag around the world, wherever, the person has decided they want to either build their future career, or maybe they're looking to change their life and relocate, or they simply just want to expand their network. And the network is really wide, because I recently was attending a course with Harvard, and I went to Boston, and just one message away, I was able to meet with some alumni and have nice lunch and learn more about the Boston and Harvard as well. So it's really, great experience and great connections all over the world.
Mm. When during the actual program itself, what were some of the highlights in terms of like classes that you did, and they have like leadership programs and stuff. What were some of the highlights of the course?
Yes, I think INSEAD is very unique because obviously, like every other MBA program, you have the core modules that I think every MBA school offers. However, beyond the core modules, you have electives, which are taking place 2 weeks in Fontainebleau in summer, which are great courses, but also a lot of fun, because the entire cohort of 200 plus people come together, and even alumni are able to join those electives as well.
Mm.
So it's great time in July in France. And then there are 3 key management challenges that are kind of all over the world. People can travel to Brazil, to India, to US, obviously Singapore and Fontainebleau and Abu Dhabi, attending more specialized courses based on their interests, whether it's finance, whether it's entrepreneurship, cultural leadership, and so forth. So I think it's quite unique to be able to really kind of go everywhere and to experience these things.
What did you do for yours?
So I went to San Francisco. I attended New Business Ventures, which was more about how you operate and launch a startup and raise capital, and how you become an entrepreneur. And I also attended one in Abu Dhabi, which was all about how you find new business ideas. And then in Singapore, I attended one which was more around personal leadership and kind of deeper development of yourself as a leader, which was in December. So you can focus based on the direction you have chosen to proceed after your MBA program. And regarding the leadership program, I think that's also very unique to INSEAD, because as you join the program in parallel to your core subjects in your study, you join a leadership program that runs the entire time, from beginning all the way till the end. And you are put in groups of 5 people, and then you're working together with leadership development consultants, doing different exercises and perspectives, reflections, working in a team, solving business challenges, getting 360 feedbacks, personal conversations, personal coaching conversations, group coaching conversations. And so it really kind of helps everyone to go to that next level, both from better understanding of business and being really able to manage across a variety of subjects when you're running a company or when you're working in business later on, but also develops you as a leader and helps you to elevate that leadership potential in yourself.
Yeah, it's nice. I want to talk about that leadership story a little bit. Before we do that, can you tell me, you talk about traveling between campuses. What is the interaction at INSEAD between the Gemba program, the full-time MBA, the Masters in Management, I think they have as well. Like, what is the interaction between all of those different programs? Did you meet anybody from the different programs?
I did meet. It was more of a social way how we met, because when I was in Singapore during the campus, we sometimes went and played some sports in afternoons, like basketball, and some people played football, and we did other things. And this is how we actually met some of the MBA students. And I did stay in touch with some of them. There were no formal kind of arrangements to meet any of the other groups. However, I know that as we entering now alumni, there is a lot of obviously mixing between the MBAs and Gembas, because everybody's alumni and all the associations welcome whoever is in that city or country to the group. But during the actual studies, I think it's more personal way to reach out and connect, but not so much maybe formal way.
It's the same thing at Oxford, exactly the same thing at Oxford. So Oxford has a well-known EMBA program as well, and I was on the full-time MBA program, and we could interact if we wanted to, but it's not like we had any classes together or anything. So it's kind of up to the individual. If you feel like that's something that's valuable, that's something you need. And I know that some of my classmates were in particularly niche industries. When they were there, they reached out to EMBAs who were also in those niche industries, who, you know, and they've built those relationships, and maybe not immediately valuable, but over time, when you kind of have that network you can reach out to, really, really useful, and a really nice kind of overlap. I think something, if I was building these programs, something I would probably encourage a bit more of. I feel like it's something that I think it's a bit of a lost opportunity in a way, that you've got such a talent, you've got these talent pools of different seniorities who could really benefit from each other. Anyway, just a thought. If INSEAD are watching this, feel free to.
There is one activity. It's called Startup Bootcamp, and it's a bootcamp that runs over the weekend, 48 hours, and everybody can join. MBAs, MIMs, EMBAs, anybody can join, and then people are kind of arranging themselves in a group based on the subject of the startup that people want to develop over the weekend, and this is where we see a mixing, and this is where we also see some mixed groups.
So
I'll stop here.
I mean, how did that start? You were on the EMBA program and moved into that. So what we haven't really touched on here is you had a really extensive experience at Johnson and Johnson before, didn't you? Where you had leadership experience in a corporate setting. So how did INSEAD help you kind of take that and apply it to this established startup, as you say?
So, I mean, my journey is a bit traditional and a bit unique in the same time, because I was in corporate healthcare company Johnson & Johnson for 16 years, like I mentioned, in quite a few roles, 16 years, 8 different roles, lived in 5 different countries, and traveled around, did my bit, climbed the ladder, and until some point I felt that perhaps I wanted to achieve more. And so this was when I started looking into different leadership programs, and obviously decided to do the Gemba program. And when I started Gemba program, I was not convinced that I'm planning to lead JJ. I was convinced that I want something else, but I wasn't fully sure. So I also explored pharmaceutical side of Johnson & Johnson, and was selected for some positions there. But then over time, I really kind of felt more and more that I would like to change. And if there's one time in my life to make that change, that would be the time when I'm in Gemba. Because with the network, with the context, with the new knowledge and kind of, new insights, that was the time to do it. And so I took a career break. I explored various kind of fields and potential avenues of my interest from wellness and health and different things, but the kind of the fulfillment of human potential, or what we can achieve, what we are really capable of, unlocking our potential, unlocking potential of a team, really kind of making us better as leaders. That was one theme that was always there. Actually, my very first job was connected to that before Johnson & Johnson. And so I felt like, with all that journey around, I came back where I started my career, which was in training and development. And when this opportunity came up, because the company was looking for a new leadership to take this company to the next level, to execute a turnaround of the company, to develop new launch products, I felt like that spoke to me, and I felt like the right place to be.
So leadership as a concept is, I mean, obviously the entire business is focused around leadership. Can you talk to us about what you mean by leadership? Because it's a term that's thrown around quite a lot, isn't it? You hear loads of different contexts, and to different people it can mean loads of different things. And often in MBA applications, it's a theme that comes up in essays, interview questions. It's a very common MBA interview question. What's your leadership style, for example? What do you mean when you talk about leadership? How do you perceive leadership?
I think how we perceive, there are different styles, and I don't think there is actually one answer. I mean, I was just spending a week in Harvard learning about adaptive leadership, which is very different from any other leadership, because this is about pushing people to the edge of their comfort zone in order to solve, big challenges that don't really have technical solutions. And that's also leadership. Servant leadership, we have authentic leadership, we have all kind of leadership, but I think it's more about when you have those skills and abilities to work with a team, you create a learning organization, learning team, learning board, and if people are capable of learning, if they are capable of achieving new capabilities, expand their capacities, then they will obviously be able to achieve better things. The other piece around leadership and what we do when we develop leaders is around obviously enhancing their self-awareness, also increasing their collaboration, removing kind of silos and kind of egos, and really making everybody work more as a cohesive team. So I think that's another theme that is always kind of ongoing, collaboration.
And how does someone know which of those different leadership styles is theirs? Right? Like you've been working in Johnson Johnson, for example, for 16 years, and you have a leadership style, but it kind of, I might like to think that your leadership style just changes depending on the situation you're in, and no one's like robotic in that way. Like, how do I know what leadership style is my leadership style?
I mean, in INSEAD, we have some tools. During the leadership development program, there is a lot of kind of reflection and feedback, each other's feedback, team feedback, 360 stakeholder feedback. So you get a little bit of sense, perhaps, what's your leadership style, and you get exposed to all these different styles. So you can, analyze and put yourself in a box if you like to do that. But I think I'm with you on that, because when you are leading a business or leading a team, different situations require different style. Startup is different from established, from turnaround, from a stagnant business, and so forth. So I think those are leaders who are able to pick a little bit of the best of each other and adopt what's needed, and be flexible, and be able to learn, and be able to keep open minds. I think those are the ones who succeed usually.
It's interesting that you say that about the 360 feedback. Something that I often get as an admissions consultant is after people get admitted into an EMBA program, an MBA, or whatever program they're in, they often send me afterwards they start on the program, and they sign up for these leadership development courses, as you say, and they often send me an evaluation form to fill in about them. And I think what's happening here, or as I understand what's happening here, is that when you start an MBA program, you're encouraged to go, as part of the leadership development program, you're encouraged to go out to your network and ask them, how do you perceive me in these various categories? And it's going to be anonymous, etc. So please be really honest about it. And so by getting this external feedback from lots of different places, from their personal and professional network, it sounds like these leadership programs are using that information to sort of give you an outsider's view of your own behavior. And I assume from that, companies like yours can drive change, and you can, once you realize how others perceive you, you can start to change that and train that and improve that.
Exactly. You just described exactly how it's being done in INSEAD. Well done. And also, obviously how leadership development works in a company. So it usually starts with assessment 360, or, there's so many different assessments that can be used, including team assessments as well. So not just you as an individual, but also you as a team, and how you operate as a team, or how you're perceived from the outside as a team. And then once you have that assessment, and you understand what that, what is perception, what is reality, but obviously, 18 people out of 20 will tell you that, that you are great at listening, that potentially there is some truth to it. Or if 18 people out of 20 will tell you that perhaps you need a little bit more patience, perhaps some truth to it, and you can start working on that.
Before being an admissions consultant, I worked in a corporate environment as well. I was on a trading floor in an investment bank, and we also filled out these kind of 360 evaluations. And I'll be honest, I didn't place that much truth in these things for two reasons. One, because when I was filling them out, I know that I was scared of these things leaking, and I would fill them out saying, yeah, my boss is fantastic and absolutely brilliant, even though they were an absolute train wreck, some of them. And at the same time, I knew that when I was receiving feedback, I know people were doing the same thing. There was a whole political game within that corporate environment. So I guess the value of those 360s comes from genuine anonymity, and it's bullshit in, bullshit out, I suppose, is the saying. So how does a company like yours, or how would you recommend people to ensure that the feedback they're getting is genuine?
That's a very good question. So in our company, we don't do assessments per se. We are not an assessment company. I mean, we can pull the tools in that if they are required, then we do. We focus more on the journey after the feedback. So once that feedback is there, and sometimes it's written feedback through 360, but sometimes it's actually interviews, one-on-one interviews that are qualitative interviews, and sometimes the feedback. Actually, more often than quantitative, it's more qualitative feedback. So you send questions to people, and they are able to just openly put in words whatever they think. And obviously, it is all anonymous. I think how to ensure that it potentially in INSEAD, when we do that, we can variate the stakeholders. So we don't have to send only to our coworkers or only to our boss. We can send it to peers, to friends, to sports team, friends, to old friends, to whomever we want, right? So it's much more wide, and it kind of, I think, prohibits a little bit that what you just mentioned. So you can choose whom you send it. And you can send it to wide network, which I always recommend. I believe that I sent mine to like 40 people. And I was very lucky because like 35 of them responded. So I had a really great, 360 people.
Yeah. So this is obviously an instance of technology helping us to become better leaders or coach others. And how do you think technology is going to change the industry going forward? Now, I've got some opinions on this, but I'd love to hear how you think technology is going to affect it. We've got AI, we've got the metaverse potentially coming in and opening up opportunities. What do you think it's going to look like in the next few years?
I'm very curious about it. I actually just bought a new book, which is The Digital Coaching Revolution, that I haven't yet quite read, but I'm looking forward to read it. And I think technology will be changing a lot. I do still believe that professions that really involve this one-on-one connection, holding space for someone, I mean, is it a clinical psychologist, psychiatrist, leadership experts, coaches, consultants? I still feel there is a lot of human need to be heard, to be listened to, talk to exchange views and ideas. And I'm not fully sure that AI will do that for us. Maybe at some point, I don't know. I think there is a lot of space to improve processes, to make us more efficient, to kind of enable things. Like in our company, for example, we are looking to use AI to summarize kind of the key points from the feedback, for example, to bring out potential, development areas, so that instead of a coach needing to read 25 pages of feedback, AI can do that and really bring out the key points, or even for the user as well to potentially, see what's most relevant from all the feedback to understand it better. So I think there is a space, but maybe not for that very human touch.
It's going to be interesting. So the acronym or the acronym anecdote, whatever metaphor that I always point to is back in the day when we were just getting started with computers and the internet, and I was setting up the computer in the living room by plugging all the cables in, and it was all very exciting. We used to be very excited when we got an email. And so we'd have a pile of letters on our desk. Oh, I got an email, and it's very exciting. And now, fast forward, 20 whatever years later, and when you got tons and tons of email, and you're very excited when you get a handwritten letter. And I think the reason for that is I think people value receiving something authentic and that somebody has spent love and attention and time on, that basically something that can't be scaled, right? So when you receive a handwritten letter that you can tell somebody has sat down with a pen and paper for a little while and written that out, you know that they've dedicated a few minutes to you and to thinking about you. If you receive an email in a distribution list, that you haven't had that, you haven't received that. Similarly, if you're receiving sort of generic coaching that hasn't been tailored to you, or that has been made by AI or in a computer, you don't assign the same value to it. So I'm really interested to hear how this industry is going to progress, and whether it can be automated, or whether it's something that we can whether it's something that ends up becoming more of a premium service. Because I know that your work, you're really focused on leadership teams, and you have that one-on-one connection that you build with leadership teams, don't you?
Correct.
So
Yes.
presumably you're going to continue that business model. You're going to stay down that route.
Yes, I mean, I think in coaching, there is potentially, we need to differentiate what is technical, kind of technical solution, and what is more qualitative solution. Because in coaching, there's many different things you can do in coaching. How to give a feedback. You could potentially have a AI help you, try to give feedback, and AI gives you whether it was good or not good based on some kind of framework that's kind of, preloaded to AI. Similar to how interviews, I mean, your work in this space, you know that there are many tools already, how you can practice your interview skills, and then you get AI feedback on your language and so forth. So I think there is a space for these more technical solutions, but then, when it comes to really tailored to you, taking your assessment, taking your needs, taking your strengths, taking your weaknesses, and then taking people around you as well, and environment around you, and the industry where you are part of, and the organization that you're building, and different personalities that play into that space, and different stakeholders that you have to manage. I think that AI is potentially not quite there yet, and you need that human person to help you navigate all of that network and figure out how you need to move forward to be successful.
Yeah. Well, it's quite scary in a way, isn't it?
But I'm curious. I think for your work, the technical probably will be addressed via AI. But then I could imagine that what you do is helping participants craft their story in a very kind of compelling way. I don't know that AI can replace what you do.
Not yet, touch wood. No, I think we're pretty safe at the moment. There's a few reasons for that. I think one of them is that a big part of our work is what you could call, if let's talk about it in technical terms, a big part of our work is data entry. In other words, I spend hours listening to people, hearing out their experiences, hearing out their stories, all the way back from when they were a kid, through undergrad, through internships, first job, second job, etc., and taking all of that information in and kind of processing that into a career narrative, into a theme. And yeah, you could, if you wanted to, you could sit and enter all of that stuff into some sort of AI system, but and then ask the system to process that into a career narrative. You could do that, but that's going to lack a human component to it, and it's not going to be very fun because you've got to type all that out. And I don't know, I can't see that at the moment being something that AI is going to disrupt. I think there's a skill there that comes with experience in various industries, and as you'll know, it's why our work focuses so much on particular industries. Like I imagine you're doing mentorship work on a sort of one-to-one basis. Do you find yourself mentoring more effectively with people who are maybe going into maybe young at J&J, for example, or kind of overlap with your experience?
Yes, I think it's always overlapping with your experience, right? Because people are seeking, at least for mentorship specifically, people usually seek where they want to go. So they look for mentors who kind of been there, done that, and now moving to the next space. So I encounter more professionals who potentially are in corporate and they want to change the job, or they are trying to figure out what to do with their career next, and so forth.
Maybe I might throw in young women who are looking to emulate your success in a corporate environment, for example. My point is that they're looking for somebody who has maybe a shared background to them and a shared experience. And while a machine could somehow be programmed to have that experience, that's something I don't think we're at yet. So it's that experience and synergizing stories into a narrative, which is something that it goes way beyond, essay writing and way beyond just interview prep. That is something quite human and quite core. For the moment, that's not being disrupted, but time will tell.
think, I mean, for, you talked about stories, and I like stories, and, I'm also quite active on LinkedIn, and I share a lot of stories on LinkedIn as well. And I think that's how we connect with human beings, right? We connect via stories, and it's hard for AI to kind of take all those stories. And also when we work with leaders, or, when I do my mentorship, it's a lot about stories, because, what story is playing in your life? What story, how are you in that story that is, your life essentially? Are you seeing yourself as successful? Are you seeing someone, who has a lot of doubts and kind of issues with confidence and so forth, or fears? You want to take some actions, but you're, bottling your fears. So there's a lot of this stories. And then what's the story around you? Where you come from, where you are currently, and where you want to go. So there's a lot of stories, and I think that's what differentiates us as humans, that we have those stories. And also, when it comes to even writing or sharing, or, we have a podcast, we have a stories, and we share. I mean, AI can give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is 5 ways to do that, or 5 ways to do that. But the story is yours to share, right?
Let me give you another anecdote. This is one that I heard recently, which was my dad has sheep, right? And he goes to like sheep school, or whatever that involves. And he was at the sheep school. He was saying they had a bunch of applications to work at the sheep school from veterinary students. And these are sort of, probably farmers, probably in their 60s, whatever, reading these applications from vets for vet school, and for sheep school. And apparently, like 90% of the applications came through all looked identical. Right?
Wow.
Like all of these applications had been written by somebody going to AI, going to ChatGPT and saying, write me an application for sheep school. And it was like, I really like sheep, and I'm available in July, and I'd like to work at sheep school. And the 60-year-old farmer who didn't really know where these things had come from just threw out 90% of them. So that idea of being authentic and being genuine and being human and telling your story in an authentic way, to the point where sometimes, a spelling mistake in an application wouldn't be the end of the world, right? Because it's that extra signal to the reader that you are human, you are yourself, you are putting yourself forward, and you are dedicating time to this application, and you're not trying to scale it. That I think we're entering a weird world where maybe a spelling mistake, or umming and ahhing in a video, for example, maybe that's not bad. Maybe that's just human, and maybe people ascribe more value to that.
It's more real. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, also talking about what I know that many people come to me, how was your experience in MBA? Was it worth it? How to prepare to get inside in the school and so forth. I mean, for me, there's to do a lot with living your life, exposing yourself to various experiences. I have lived in so many different countries. I have done many things before I entered Gemba, and that shows, because you're able to answer an interview, not just standard answer that you have learned from some AI tool, but you are actually able to share your own experience from, how you manage the team, or how you transitioned, or how you changed company's culture, or how you, whatever you did in your work, right? That's the real thing that that's not what everybody else will say, and how your journey was formed. And I always think that we need to live a little more, not just be there.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, I there's a lot of I see in MBA students, everybody's like, I did this school and that school, and then I did this consulting and that consulting, and at some point, people are kind of in mid-career, and they maybe feel like they are burnt out sometimes, or maybe they haven't reached their personal goals, or they suddenly realize that world is larger, and they haven't seen any of that, or many kind of realizations come, especially in Gemba program, because people are kind of in midlife phase, reflecting and thinking, and I see a lot that people take some time off because they want to experience just more beyond just the job. So I always feel like we need to also live, and especially when you're in Gemba, there's a lot of networking, there's a lot of travels involved, and it's really nice to not just focus, purely on academics. Of course, they matter and are important, but it's also important to connect with people, to build those networks, to go to those places, and to have a little bit of fun as well. I mean, that's very important. You're paying a lot of money to be there. You might as well enjoy it.
It's funny you say that. Before my MBA, I left my work at the bank and I think it was like 6 months gap, knowing that I was going to go to Oxford, and I had 6 months. I had a little bit of money saved up, and I have 6 months to do whatever I want. And it's funny that experience, what I ended up doing was flying to, I was in London. I left my flat in London. I sold all of my possessions. I actually broke up with my girlfriend at the time as well. And I flew to Australia and I landed in Sydney and I bought a motorbike and rode around Australia for those 5-6 months. Just with a tent on the back of my motorbike, parked up in random fields in the middle of nowhere in Australia, made friends with a local farmer, made friends with the randomers in the pub. And I reckon, honestly, that experience taught me as much about human connections as the MBA did 6 months later. And it's just an incredible contrast between, structure and unstructure, going from one to the other. And I think they complemented each other. So, you imagine that I walk into an MBA program and everyone's sort of standing in circles awkwardly, never met each other before, and you kind of break in the ice. And somebody says, hey, what have you been doing? Oh, well, I've just got back from my motorbike ride around Australia. And boom, you've got a connection with someone. They think, oh, this person's interesting. And maybe they have a motorbike, and maybe you have something to talk about immediately. And so that human connection comes from not just the in-class experience, as you say, but also from the outsider class experience. And yeah, I think you're totally right. I think leveraging that is absolutely crucial.
Yeah, I mean, I took time off. Quite a few of my classmates took time off, and I think it's really worth it because you need a pause, especially if you want to change something. And many people enter. I guess there are three types of people. Some want to really advance in their companies. Some want to move into entrepreneurship, and then some want to change their careers or something, to change maybe company or change industry, or two of those. So I think that the goals are variety, but usually those are the kind of the themes. And I think for those who enter MBA Gemba program wanting to change, like really change, whether change industry, whether change company, it's very hard to change when you are, full into your job. Then you have your Gemba, then potentially you have family and kids that many people at that age have. You have no space to think at all. Like you don't even have 5 minutes to think because it's so demanding, the study schedule, the travel schedule with next to your job and kind of family life. But then if you choose to take some break and then you're left with Gemba and your social life and family, you actually suddenly have space to think. And with all that new inputs that you have coming in, from professors, from your other students, from friends, from network in general, you get so many new inputs that suddenly things open up and you start seeing beyond what you believed or what you have seen before, or what you generally been exposed to, and this is, I think, when that magic can happen. So for anybody really looking to change careers going into Gemba, I would highly recommend to take some break as well.
And I would echo that from an MBA perspective as well, from my experience. I think a lot of people I meet, a lot of people I work with, plan that, especially, I'm going to be cultural here, especially in North America where holidays are not so common, and there's a growing culture. I speak to people who maybe they get their MBA admit and they say, oh, I'm really looking forward to a week holiday before I start my program.
Oh yeah.
And look, if you think a week is going to be enough to decompress from 5 years of hard work, it's not. So I would definitely echo that advice to try and carve out a really nice, clear window of time before the program. And actually, you had your break after the program, didn't you?
I did it. Actually, I started kind of in the middle, and I finished more or less when I finished the program. So plus minus 2 months, but I really took it during the program, which I think was amazing because I had time to do the fun things, but I also had time to focus on my studies.
Because the EMBA program, you work and study at the same time. So you're saying for the first half of the program, you worked and studied, and for the second half of the program, you studied and reflected and rested.
And did a lot of research and learning and took courses and connected with people. Yeah, I mean, career change is a full-time job,
Right.
but it's a fun journey as well. But I definitely recommend, after my experience, I definitely recommend taking some pause if that's what people want. Obviously, that's not what everybody wants.
Right, I love it. So looking back at the application process for the Gemba program, at the career pivot that you made, midway through the program, at your new work now, that in your leadership position at 7A, what advice would you give to people who are thinking about an MBA, thinking about a career transition? Maybe they're a bit burnt out from their current work and they just want change, and they see an MBA as a way of having that change. What advice would you give to people in that situation to drive that change in their life?
I've been thinking a lot about it because obviously I was encountering many people who were going there for the change, and some succeeded and some didn't. So this question, like what makes it successful, is on my mind, and that's something I'm really looking into in depth right now. I think one is, first you need to understand why you are looking to change, because it's very hard to change your career.
Mhm.
It is really, really challenging to do that. So you need to know your why. Those moments, when you're down or when things are not going as you wish, or maybe not as inspired as you wanted to be, you really need to know your why. I think that's number one. Second, like I mentioned, taking some time off to reflect and to explore a little bit is very, very important. And the third, I would say, is the networking, because any opportunity in your life, in your career, will come through your network. It will not come through applying on LinkedIn, job ad or sending your CV somewhere. It will come through your network, and sometimes it will be somebody who believes in your potential before maybe you have the skills to do the job. Sometimes it's somebody who needs exactly like you, but they will never know about you unless you know those people or somebody knows you. So the network is a really, really big piece, and Gemba is there to create that network. So if people have some time and are not so buried in the work and studies, and they actually have time to build those networks, I think that's the best thing they can do for themselves if they are looking to change career.
I mean, I had a fourth thing there, which is a financial cushion.
Absolutely, yes.
Because obviously if you're going into whether it's a Gemba or another program, you've borrowed a lot of money to pay for it, and maybe you have visa constraints as well, and you're looking to make a pivot with all of those constraints, needing another paycheck and all those constraints in place. That's going to be a challenge. I guess, from a practical perspective, any advice to people who are thinking, I want to change career, but I can't afford it?
I mean, Gemba is probably a bit less of that, I would imagine, because it's usually mid-career professionals, and they've been I think in Gemba 12, 15 years in a business, in quite successful positions, quite senior participants. So I think maybe there's a little bit of less of that. It's not the same as MBA. But of course there is. And some people borrow money, some people pay from the savings. But definitely, if you have your savings and if you have your financial cushion, that will make the journey much more enjoyable. However, I think anybody can afford to take at least 1 or 2 months off if they've been in job for 10 to 15 years and in senior positions. So it's sometimes more of a decision, I think, than ability.
Yeah, I think
because it's scary.
the saying, the colloquialism is FU money, isn't it? That's what they say. You got to save up enough FU money so that you can, if you ever get asked to do something you don't want to do by a manager, or you get put in a situation where I'm done, I don't want to do this, you've got that buffer that you can say, FU, I'm out, I'm going to go and do my own thing. And so I guess it's about having that buffer. Okay. Last question then from me is, you're obviously, your career is transitioning into a really like a high performance coaching focus. That that is a deliberate choice, a deliberate decision that you're making to pivot into this high performance coaching space. And it's something that suits that people often really really resonates with them as a career goal. So if somebody is thinking, I want to transition into a similar leadership focused, coaching focused role, what advice would you give them?
For somebody moving into coaching?
Yes.
Um, there are so many people trying to move into coaching business these days. I'm having like, how to say, a little bit of split view around this because there are many people uh, moving into coaching, and there are many coaching companies training coaches.
Yeah.
And not everybody always has the right credentials. Not everybody always has the right experience to do that. So I think for someone who really moves into coachings and wants to make a career out of it, I would firstly look for a company or a school that really has the right credentials to provide that education.
Yeah.
I think that's number one. Because there are even courses that in 5 days you become a coach. I think that's not quite credible. So I think that's number one, and then really understanding what that career path will look like. Because with so many coaches out there, how you're going to differentiate yourself, how you are will be different from another coach, and what really drives you as well to be a coach. So I think coming back to really education, look for credible institution that will give that right education, and then what kind of coaching would you like to do, and how you can carve out that space for yourself. And I think teams coaching is something. Obviously, that's the space we operate, which is teams development, teams leadership development. But that's, I think, the space that is a little bit less saturated. It's much more advanced to get into. You need even more education and even more skills and more practice. But I think for those aspiring coaches who do want to work in a corporate setting or in organizations in the futures, perhaps I would suggest to look into that space, into teams coaching and teams development, because that's a very growing market and growing space. And there's more and more demand, because I think more and more organizations, leaders are realizing the team has to be coached as a cohesive unit, not just an individual one-on-one basis, because the then team operates together. And in order to address the challenges that we face in our world with AI and climate changes and geographical dissonances, all of that, we need more leaders who are capable, but also teams who are able to perform on high level. So the need for the team coaches is just going to increase. So that's maybe something I can also recommend to look into that.
And if somebody wants to get in touch with you to talk about team coaching, maybe as an executive that has a team that they want to put through your program, how can they get in touch with you?
Absolutely. I mean, my LinkedIn is probably the easiest way. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I'm always checking my DMs, so it's very easy just to send me a message on LinkedIn, obviously.
That's everything from me. Sanita, is there anything we've forgotten to talk about?
No, I actually had one question that I was curious about, and maybe we can say that as the last one. Because you see so many leaders coming through your work, right? You talk
Yeah.
to, I think, Gemba, MBA. I don't know which one you do more of actually, but I'm curious because they probably go into those programs and look to develop some kind of leadership skills or to go to the next level. And I know what I have gotten out of the program, but I'm curious, what do you see as kind of common themes, what those leaders are looking to get out of those programs?
Great last question. I think the big one that stands out for me is communication skills. I think the people that I see and you can I can already, when I start working with people, I can already get a feel for who's going to be successful in the MBA application and further down the line. And a big part of that sensing comes from communication skills. The people that I think the thing that successful leaders have in common, early stage successful leaders have in common, I think, is a natural communication style, right? Maybe that's multiple languages, right? Ability to communicate with different groups. That's a classic INSEAD trait as well, isn't it? That their application
Yes,
requires.
yes, absolutely.
For example, maybe it's languages, maybe it's just that presence of when you're talking to someone that you feel that they want to be there with you, and you feel that they want to speak to you, and you're much more inclined to listen to those people, and you're much more inclined to follow them and be influenced by them as well. So I think for me, it's communication skills is the common trait between leaders. Now, that is partially inherent in some people. I think there's certain certain people have that natural extroversion, but I also think that through companies like yours and through coaches like you, I think people can develop that communication style. I think people who are naturally introverted and don't like talking, by pushing themselves outside of their comfort zone and by developing their body language and their leadership style, their communication style, I think they can become better leaders through training. So I'd say my answer to you is, yeah, communication style. I think that's something that stands out, that I can see from the first minute I meet someone, that when they have a strong communication style, I think they're going to be a great leader when they're a bit more senior.
And just maybe to add to that, I think great communication starts with great listening.
Right.
And this is actually where we spend a lot of time, helping leaders to become better at listening. And, I'm sure you know all about it. There are many ways to listen, but listening, not to answer, but listening to really understand and really give that other person space to express. And once you know how to listen, you also will be able to start communicating better.
Excellent. What a nice place to end the conversation.
Very good. Well, my pleasure. Really great talking to you again, Sam.
Really, really nice to talk to you again. I look forward to following all your progress on LinkedIn. I'm an avid follower. I like everything that I see, and so do hundreds of other people, clearly. So you're obviously doing something right. Congratulations, and I really look forward to following your progress. And let's talk again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. My pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you.